Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Raw Report. I'm your host, Ryan Jackson-Saw. We're talking about a very important issue. Albanese has recently announced that he wants to bring up a referendum in Australia to basically bring the original sovereign voices into Parliament and make it a part of the Constitution of Australia. So we're going to do a process of discovery here. I'm sitting with Diane, Widjun, and Wit-Boooka, and it's wonderful to have you both on the show again. And we're just going to have a chat, a discussion, and just want to hear your voices and your opinions on this referendum. So how are you guys feeling about it? Yeah.
Well, I'm not happy about it because they don't have consent from us. They're just trying to railroad it again like they did in 1967, where the Australian citizens voted to bring us in, which they didn't ask us. And
yeah, right.
As you know, all the documents that we have shows that we're not part of their system. We're in another state. And the international laws and UN laws, they all say we're another state. So even the Constitution, that's why we're not in their Constitution, because we're another state. So they're trying to drag us in there to put their foot on our throat, I suppose.
Right. So again, they're not asking for only for the Indigenous Australians vote. They're asking for the whole country's vote. So it's kind of going to be a majority rules of all kinds of people who don't even know anything about the issues that are happening. Doesn't seem very fair, does it? So what's basically the discussions like in the communities with all the mobs right now? Are they all talking about this?
Well, I was over there in Alice Springs for a little bit, and I had a chat, and no one's happy with it. Everyone wants to carry on the way it is, separation, until we get a treaty or whatever with the Crown. We have a say of our own people. Just I don't know. It's ridiculous.
Right. So what's the difference between this referendum, bringing it to the Constitution, and having a group of spokespeople speaking directly to Parliament versus the treaty? What's the big differences between those two things?
Well, you can go on, Diane.
A treaty is an agreement where two parties settle their differences when one has invaded another, or invaded their rights, invaded their trade. So how can you write First Nation people into the Constitution without having a treaty first? Because there's no agreement. You can't invade another country and then just tell everyone in that country what they have to do because other people decided. If we invaded England, you can imagine what would happen.
When all fuzzy,
no one would listen. The Australian government expects that they can bring the laws of an invader into the land of the person that was invaded without any discussion whatsoever.
Well,
there was no war.
They're only a private corporation that's supposed to come under the Commonwealth Constitution. They have no authority to do what they're doing at all, to make laws for us. 51-26, they say they can't. And if it's special law, well, it's got to be under equity, so they have no authority. They're just a foreign occupation coming here, trying to dictate, tell the First Nation people what to do, and we're sick of it. We want to move on and take control of our lives and our country.
Here's a big concern. If they have you onto the Constitution, would that then mean that the government has claimed true authority over the land? Because if it's taken ownership of the Indigenous people by putting them into the Commonwealth system, That's a concern I have with this.
Well, that's what's going to happen. And yet, who gives them consent to do this? You know, every individual man, woman has a right for, you know, to give consent. And this is not happening to anybody, for anybody. It's only left to their citizens to do this, not the original people's consent. You know, there's some people that will say, go along with it and say, yeah, we want to be part of the system, but they don't understand all culture. They don't understand what was here. They've grown up in white society. That's the trouble. You know, you need to have a wider view, and people need to be, and that's why everyone needs to have a say, because everyone doesn't understand it. And, you know, it shouldn't take a few months for this referendum to come out. It should take years and years and years, and it should be only for the First Nation people to decide.
Well, obviously this is like, there are First Nations people, especially that create the Uluru Statement. And as far as the government responding to this, obviously they believe that they're responding to a voice from the Indigenous communities. What is happening at the people who created the Uluru Statement? Who are they? Where did they come from?
It was essentially created by people that were employed by the government to do it. And a lot of those were white Australians. And it seems like the people that were at Uluru at the time were blackmailed into agreeing to a statement rather than having nothing, because they said it would be a waste of goodwill if they didn't agree to something. But people on the ground didn't write that statement. It was written by an administrator, basically. It was written by a business person, not by the tribes.
And how many people walked out of that meeting? There were heaps of people that walked out and couldn't believe the disgusting things that were going on in that meeting.
Right.
You know, they were told or else, virtually.
Well, the way you're describing it sounds almost like just a government operation. They install the Uluru Statement, and then they promise to enforce it. So it looks like it's coming from the Indigenous communities, but it's not really.
No.
But there's this huge big need, obviously, in this country where we're facing a lot of threats, especially international threats, a lot of agendas coming in, like Agenda 21 and this kind of thing, to get people off the land. And it seems like this is a precursor to that. Obviously, the Indigenous communities are strong. They hold their rights on the land, and they're going to have to somehow get you off if they're going to fulfill their dream. Do you think that this is part of that?
Well, of course it is. When Tony Abbott was the Prime Minister for Indigenous Australians, he made it very clear that they wanted to control the land. The White Australia policy is still alive and well. And despite them saying they want to make agreements with First Nation people and they want to put things right, how can a token action do anything? It will just serve to make things look good for the rest of the world, but it's not going to do anything positive for First Nation people have no say over their lives.
And that's like the Native Act, 1993. You know, it's just tokenist, and they just take advantage of everything. They lie in that. And these barristers, solicitors, you know, they don't tell the truth to the original people who want to sign or see that document or have to engage in that native title document. They don't tell them the truth of what's really happening. And, you know, it's that system.
Well, obviously, with what's happening in the world right now and in the nation, the whole country coming together would be the best possible thing we could do. Maybe not necessarily through this mechanism, but we need to come together if we're going to be a strong country. What are some ideas, do you think? I know it's a big ask to finally come up with some solutions, but what can we do?
Well, I was at a meeting in Imbil on the weekend. People want to know what we can do. And they're all worried about, they want to go back to the Commonwealth Constitution 1900, which should be still lawful today. And the government ignore it. And, you know, I said to them, I said, well, if you go back to that, you have to realise that Queen Victoria wrote that. Well, she signed off on it to pass it, but she also signed off on some other laws, you know, the Pacific Island Protection Act and the Pacific Order and the Bunya Proclamation, which says they don't own the land. She has no sovereignty or dominion over the land, and neither will her heirs or successors. So people got to understand today that those laws are still laws, and we need to work around it and come together. So, you know, this dragging us into a constitution is not the way, because we don't want it. You know, all this stuff happened all over the world. You know, the American Indians and everything, Africa and all this. This is what they do. We don't want a part of that. We want to create a self-determination by ourselves and then everybody in.
Right. I mean, I'm a white fella, I know, but I want the right to self-determination as well. I don't like being part of this this corporate system because they describe us as chattel. It's not very nice. We want out as well, a lot of us. That's what the protests were about.
Well, that's what OSTF and all of us who ever signed up to OSTF, you know, it's Widjun. Blackfella and whitefella working together. But unfortunately, we don't have the guns. And this is the way this corporate world's working, is to take over by thuggery.
That's the way power unfortunately rules. It divides us, it creates division, and through that division they can create a problem, a reaction, solution. And it looks like they're doing that again. I mean, you got people like Lydia Thorpe in the parliament right now using very divisive language as well. That will just create further divisions. What did you think about her statement? Like, obviously calling out the Queen as a colonizer. She had actually done quite a lot for the Indigenous Australians as well.
Well, some people think, well, you know, they're trying all different aspects of getting in there and changing things for the better for everybody, so we can all be free men and women. And I think that's what Lydia's trying to do. But you know, I never saw the interview or never saw when she was doing her oath, so I can't talk much about it.
Unfortunately, what she said is true. The Crown colonised this country, and this country is still colonised. And people are offended by that. And it's because no one has really dealt with what happened in the past. And it's unfortunate that people see Lydia Thorpe as being divisive, because she is trying to raise awareness about the truth. But I can see that a lot of people would be upset because she's so forthright in doing that. But there needs to be a dialogue about what happened in the past and how to move forward. And writing people into the Constitution without their permission and then saying, well, you're in there now, but you can't have a say. You know, just having a token voice to Parliament with no actual power is a waste of time, and it's going to make people feel more divided.
Well, it's going to be like the Native Title Act. Takes away everyone's rights. That's what it's all about, is just taking away all the First Nation people's rights. So, and that's why a lot of people don't want nothing to do with the Native Title Act. And this constitution referendum thing to bring us in, well, it's the same thing. They want to take away our ownership of our land, or our connection. So we don't want to be a part of it.
If you think back, when Vincent Lingiari was the symbolic gesture that he was given back his land, and then Bob Hawke with the Barunga Treaty, and they were thinking about how they could liaise with First Nation people and write a meaningful treaty so that what happened in the past was put behind everyone and we could all move forward. And it hit a brick wall. So why was that not continued? That was a meaningful action. If it had been continued and debated and people had a say about how it was rolled out, that would have been something that everyone could have been happy with. But just telling people, we're going to write you into the Constitution and we're going to tell you you don't have a voice except for a token voice, that's just going to breed more discontent.
Obviously, it's saying that they probably want that discontent there, because that's the divide and conquer, of course. But you know, the spirit of the Indigenous community is wonderful. Like there's a lot of people working very, very hard out there right now to bring people together, to go back to the traditional ways, and to the winning land rights back as well. Like that massive case that happened up in North Queensland, that was wonderful. That's 1 million hectares that were gifted back to the Indigenous people. So that's theirs now. I'd love to see more of that. Obviously, yeah, there's multiple nations around the whole country, and perhaps every nation should have at least a portion of land, at least that they can be autonomous there.
Yeah, well, that's right. You know, Kabi people have nothing. You know, under their, you know, the government's jurisdiction, we own nothing, and yet they want to have a treaty, or they want to drag us into their constitution. Well, people don't want to be a part of stuff like that.
Sorry, there's a delay here. It's rather ironic that the Bunya Proclamation in 1842 said no one was allowed to settle here. And now they're saying that people here have no right to their own land. When the sacred site was destroyed, Poona Lake, they're planning to destroy that. They want to sell off national parks. They want to establish all sorts of industry on land that already, under their own regulations, belongs to Kabi people. So where is their equity in any of that?
Yeah, it's two-faced hypocrisy that we see from our government at all times. It's something you can rely on, is that they'll say one thing and do another.
That's right.
Well, thank you very much for both coming on the show. I really appreciate you guys speaking out and sharing this information. So sorry we couldn't go any longer. It's just we do have to unfortunately work with a time limit for these interviews. We'd love to have you both back on at some point. Obviously, the fight with the Kabi people for your land is ongoing, and would love to speak to you more about that, so we can have an update and see how the case is going.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, it's going pretty slowly, actually. They're just like they've charged me trespass about 5 times now in my country, and even one at the Jackie Kundu, and they drag it on for 6 months and then they throw it out. They're only dragging it on at the moment so they can get the road finished. That's all they're doing. It's crime. Cultural heritage, 2003, Queensland's. It's a crime.
I stand by, it's probably one of the most important sacred sites in this country as well. Given the history of the place is very, very important. And our government really does undervalue the importance of these places, especially to not just your history, but to human history itself.
That's right. And they rely on First Nation artwork and all this Indigenous stuff to bring tourists into Australia. And yet they destroy it all too. It's ridiculous.
Well, Wit-Boooka, Diane, Widjun, thank you both so much again. We'll have to have you on the show again soon. And yeah, so this has been the Raw Report, guys, and this is the discussion that is going to be ongoing for the next few weeks. So this isn't something that's going to be easily sorted, but we welcome your opinions as well. If you want to leave some comments down below, let us know what you think. And yeah, hopefully there's something positive can come out of all of this. Well,
thanks, Ryan. Bona Whoopin.
Bona Whoopin. Thank you so much.